This is the controversial video that I mentioned in my video the other day that I was not going to record, but I've decided I am going to record it. Oh well. Before I get into it, I want to give a special thank you to all of my channel members. James Sucks, Andrew Peacock, Box Float, Andreas Anderson, Vince Tremblay, 1, 2, 3, 4, Luke Wenzel, Riley Bergen, Isaiah Robeson, Ken Noble Bowles, Mr. Sean D. Fitz, Evan Foot, Rhea, and Micah Carter. Thank you all my channel members, for your continued support. So, before we dive into the topic of this video, let's talk a little bit about civil religion and what civil religion is. Civil religion is defined as the implicit religious values and beliefs of a nation expressed through public rituals, symbols, and ceremonies. Now, a famous and obvious example of this, there are clearly other examples, but the one I'm going to draw parallels to here, for reasons that will probably be obvious, maybe not, is the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire and the United States of America have always drawn a comparison. You had the Pax Romana and you have the Pax Americana. The Roman peace and the American peace. People talk about the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of the American Empire. These things the United States has always been talked to and discussed as the modern Rome. Maybe sometimes alluded to and sometimes explicitly called as such. So we're going to look at the Roman Empire here, where the practice of Religio Romana, or Cultus Deorum, which is the Roman religion, was inextricably intertwined with the state. You could not have one without the other. The practice of offering gold, silver, fruit, incense, and wine to Jupiter. The practice of having a lararium in your house and praying and leaving offerings to the lares, the house spirits who protected your home and your family. Partaking in the holiday of Saturnalia, where master served slave and rich became poor. That was the cornerstone of the Roman identity. You practiced this religion because you were Roman, and you were Roman because you practiced this religion. Now, the key pillars of any civil religion are the invocation of God or gods in political speeches and in public monuments, the quotation of religious texts on public occasions, the veneration of political leaders, using political leaders as a source of morality, the veneration of veterans and soldiers, the use of religious symbols on public buildings and founding myths oaths, practically to draw upon real-world examples. This might look like crowds singing national anthems in unison. This could be parades featuring national symbols such as flags, reciting oaths of allegiance to the state, much as one would to religious deity you think of. I don't know if things have changed, but when I was in school, every morning we had to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I said that so many times. I have not said the Pledge of Allegiance in probably more than a decade, but I said it so many times it is buried deep in there, much like what do you say at the start of praying the rosary? I believe in one true, I don't know exactly the Apostles' Creed, it's been a while, but I believe in one true God, I believe in the one Holy Catholic Church, etc., etc. You're praying an oath. In declaration of penance, you're saying, I pledge, I'm saying, I am saying this, I'm declaring this. It's the same thing at the beginning of a prayer. I believe this. Same thing. Simplified and one-sided mythological retelling of state history and monuments of reverence to the state or its leaders, past and present. Now let's go back to that image from the beginning. And I'll cut in here with some smaller portions. So what do we see here? Right here we have the Roman goddess Libertas, or Liberty, outfitted in American regalia with the bald eagle by her side. Here we have Minerva, the Roman goddess of craft and wisdom, standing beside Benjamin Franklin and some other American inventors. The Roman god Neptune, the god of the sea, earthquakes and horses, lying telephone cable to Europe. The Roman god of merchants and the messenger of the gods Mercury, repaying money to American Revolution financiers. Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, with the steam engine and anvil, symbols of American industry. And Ceres, the Roman goddess of agriculture, with the mechanical reaper, an early American agricultural innovation which completely revolutionized farming. And again, one could easily think this is explicitly a Roman religious painting, or perhaps a modern interpretation of one, but right there, sat in the middle, in the position that perhaps a Jupiter or a Zeus or a Jesus would take in a religious painting. We have open palm on one side, sword in the other, draped in the purple garb worn by Roman generals after triumph, deified to the position of godhood himself, George Washington, the founding father of the United States. And the manner in which George Washington is presented is important as well. He reflects popular depictions of what the statue of Zeus at Olympia, one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, is thought to have looked like before it was destroyed, assuming the position as king of the gods. People have also said that his pose is reminiscent of that of Baphomet, once worshipped by the Knights Templar during the Crusades, and now a popular figure amongst many Western esoteric and occult traditions. And we know that a number of the American founding fathers were very interested in occultism and esoteric traditions. I believe I don't remember if it was Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin was a deist. They weren't Christian, they were a deist. The American Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, of course, we know that. And officially, the United States does not enforce or endorse state-sponsored religion. However, one would be hard-pressed to argue against the claim that Protestant Christianity shaped the culture of the United States, and that Protestant Christianity and its values are strongly woven through the social fabric of the United States. You can look at the ceremonial deism present through the United States, and ceremonial deism, that is religious practices and references being used in a cultural context instead of a religious context. You can see the impact there. In God we trust, the Pledge of Allegiance, as I just said, one nation under God. So many more examples, but this went to the Supreme Court. This issue to the Supreme Court, specifically with regards to the national motto of "In God We Trust." I believe, I don't remember exactly, but it was either an atheist or a non-Christian group challenging, saying, "In God We Trust" shouldn't be the national motto because this isn't a Christian nation. It goes all the way to Supreme Court. And I am going to quote what the Chief Justice said in their dissenting opinion. As a form of ceremonial deism, this is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court referencing the national motto of "In God We Trust" in references to God in the Pledge of Allegiance. He said, as a form of ceremonial deism, it is protected from the Establishment Clause scrutiny chiefly because they have lost, through rote repetition, any significant religious content. I'll repeat that. They have lost, through rote repetition, any significant religious content. They say that's because the way in which the word God is being used by the state is not in a religious context, but a civil context. Now, to specifically talk here about the American civil religion, this comes in the year 1967 by a sociologist named Robert Bellah. And so, to quote Robert Bellah, he says, "Many Americans embrace a common civil religion with certain fundamental beliefs, values, symbols, holidays, and rituals in parallel to or independent of their chosen religion. The United States has also created quasi-religious texts that are held in similar reverence and regard as religious texts. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. People talk about, allude to, and call upon these documents in a way that a Christian would the Bible or a Hindu would the Vedas. These documents hold a supreme power, and merely invoking them can compel something or create something. You think about it, people say like, oh, that's unconstitutional, that goes against, that's against my rights, that's a violation of my rights, that goes against this amendment, that goes against this amendment, it's a piece of paper that holds all of this power and reverence. And the American flag is the symbol of this religion, perhaps the eagle as well, much in the way the cross would be for Christianity, or the fish. And we see this in the way that people appropriate the flag to communicate values about themselves and their worldview. The nation also turns presidents and generals into the American equivalent as a positive and a negative. You'll hear Republicans say, we're the party of Lincoln, or you'll hear the term like Reagan Republican. He was a figure so revered and popular that other people tried to imitate them and or make themselves in their image in order to garner favor and gain power. You talk about, Kennedy, famously, Paul Ryan in the VP debates. Joe Biden, hit him with the, "Oh, now you're Jack Kennedy," and that, people talk about that VP debate moment as part of what sunk the Romney campaign. Because Mitt Romney himself was actually quite popular, and even with Obama being as popular as he was, Romney was still pulling quite well. But then that VP debate and the Jack Kennedy line, and immediately that took the legs over any Paul Ryan. Jack Ryan's a book character. But literally just invoking the name of JFK was enough to completely derail his political career and that presidential campaign. These names hold power, these names hold weight, and they're invoked in a way that a Catholic might invoke saints like Michael, Francis, or Catherine. Robert Bellah also posits that American civil religion has all the mechanisms to fill the key religious functions that people turn to religion for: integration, legitimation, and prophecy can all be done through the means of the state. And out there there was this article I found, and it sort of identifies. It says that they did 50 years worth of research and surveys and studies. This was published in 2014 by Anthony Squires. And he says after 50 years of scholarship and research, he identified 14 principal tenets of American civil religion. Think of these sort of as the 10 Commandments. Now there's 14 of them. I wonder if he chose that number because the 14 stripes on the flag. But in order: 1, filial piety. So filial, family; piety, reverence, worship of family; reverence to certain sacred texts and symbols such as the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the flag; the sanctity of American institutions; the belief in the God of Abraham or a deity. And I think that's very important, saying, listen, like most people believe in Jesus, Yahweh, God, Jehovah, whatever, but any sort of belief in deity is actually a key tenet to American civil religion. Any deity will do. The idea that rights are divinely given. So, you hear that all the time, even from people who aren't religious. My God-given rights. Well, no, isn't it the authority of the state that is giving you your rights? It's, the state holds the authority, but no, the God-given rights. The notion that freedom comes from God through government. Government authority comes from God or some higher transcendent authority. The conviction that God can be known through the American experience. I think that's very interesting. Simply by being an American, living in the United States of America, and living the American dream, the American experience, you will experience God. God is the supreme judge. God is sovereign. America's prosperity results from God's providence. city upon a hill or a beacon of hope and righteousness for the rest of the world to follow. The principle of sacrificial death and rebirth, and America serves a higher purpose than self-interest. America has a moral prerogative to do more than just serve itself. Those are identified as the 14 commandments, to say, of American civil religion. But to close this off, let's go back a little bit and ask ourselves, are there any fundamental beliefs, values, symbols, and holidays? And I think, speaking from my personal experience, we can say that there are. The beliefs is probably the hardest one to pin down, but looking at values, we all know they're fundamental American values. We hear the term all the time. People say it in politics, American values, both in positive and negative ways. And for there to be American values, for those words to have any meaning at all, it means that we have to have a defined and clear idea of what it is to be an American and what it is to not be an American, and that there has to be a delineation, or else there cannot be American values, right? One cannot exist without the other. And that's formed through our shared values: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's right there in the Declaration of Independence. Beyond that, Americans value freedom. They value independence, as in the Declaration of Independence. And then we look at our shared American symbols. Obviously, we have the flag and the bald eagle. Those are obvious ones. But I think even beyond that, you have things like Mount Rushmore. That's an American, that's a symbol. The White House, wartime monuments like Iwo Jima. Those are foundational to American culture and life, and most Americans will know them intrinsically, just via growing up in the United States. You just sort of osmosis these things into yourself. And you look at holidays, Christmas is a Christian holiday. You celebrate the birth of Christ, yet it's considered a distinctly American value to celebrate Christmas. And even non-Christian immigrant communities feel compelled to participate in Christmas as a civic holiday. To fit into broader American culture and American society. And really the only two groups I can think of that have sort of resisted this are Jewish people and Chinese people. And this has sort of created this own little side tradition where a lot of Jewish people will go and eat at Chinese restaurants on Christmas. Which, if you've never gone out to eat Chinese on Christmas, it was one of my favorite things to do back home. But you have things like Veterans Day, the 4th of July, and these take on a civil importance, sort of a religious importance as well. And again, the deification and worship of these civil servants, of presidents past and present, of soldiers past and present. And a lot of people, Americans especially, may think, like, wasn't this something every country does? I certainly thought that. But no, it's not. Not every country treats their veterans that way. Not every country treats their political leaders that way. And I think that's a core tenet of this idea of American civil religion. Anyways, this is surely not a full view of this. I'm just scratching the surface here. If you're interested in more, there's so many sources here. Religion for Breakfast did a good series on this as well, which will be way better than anything I could do here. But it's just something that's always fascinated me, is sort of an intersection, a crossroads, if you will, of two of my favorite interests, politics and religion. Two things I'm really interested in, but two things I really never talk about on this channel for good reason. But I hope you found this interesting at the very least. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this every single week. And until next time,